the announcement of God's judgment and the physical events that bring that judgment to pass. If you ever just, said, I'm not going to worry about this, I'm going to let the Lord take care of it, and then a couple days later you're like, Lord, why ain't you took care of this yet? Things happen in God's time, not our time. We must never make the mistake of thinking because some time has passed that somehow God's forgotten about his word or he's ignored his promises. Remember what God said he was going to do to Eli and his two sons? Now, a lot of time has passed since he said that was going to happen in this lesson here. God pronounced judgment of Eli and his evil sons. Samuel had confirmed this judgment, yet life went on day by day. The evil sons of Eli continued to pervert the worship at the tabernacle like they had been doing, even after they were told, you're going to die. Things just went on. And at the same time, Samuel grew in stature before the people. According to God's plan, the time finally arrived for Eli and his sons to be removed from Israel and to be turned from the anarchy that we had talked about last week that had been going on back to trust God and to the leadership of God's man Samuel. The events of this lesson that we're looking at this morning took place over a long period of time. I don't want you to think that this happened. The events that we're looking at this morning took place over a long period of time. We're just going to sum it up here. They concern the Ark of the Covenant. That's what we're going to be talking about this morning. And it's mentioned, the Ark is mentioned 35 times in chapters 4, 5, and 6. And the Philistines are often mentioned as the enemies of Israel in 1st and 2nd Samuel. The Ark, if you study the Bible, and if you study the lessons of the Bible, the Ark was a wooden box, and it had been overlaid with gold, and was the only furnishing in the Holy of Holies part of the tabernacle. It contained the table of the law, as well as Aaron's rod and a pot of manna. The mercy seat on top of the ark was the throne of God from which he spoke to Israel, if you read Exodus chapter 25, verses 10 through 22. The ark was the most holy and it was the most precious physical thing in the nation of Israel. The Philistines were the arch enemies of Israel. They had been displaced by the occupation of this land, and they were constantly at war with Israel. Now, this is an interesting fact. I just want you to point out, who is always at war with Israel right now in today's present time? Palestine. The Philistines are not Palestinians. These are two different people, okay? I want you to understand that because the Philistines were destroyed. But it's very interesting that this same land that all this is happening, if you look at a map, is the Gaza Strip. Just kind of piqued my curiosity a little bit when I learned that. The Philistines were the arch enemies of Israel. They had been displaced by the occupation of this land, and they were constantly at war with Israel, seeking to drive the Israelites out of what they considered their land. And I find it very interesting that we're still talking about Gaza today. Different people, Philistines and Palestinians are different, but it's the same piece of land. All right, let's get back to the lesson. Let's talk about the ark of God, how the ark was taken. And we're going to skip around in chapter 4 here, but let's look at 1 Samuel chapter 4. In verses 1 through 4, it says, And the word of Samuel came to all Israel. Now Israel went out against the Philistines to battle and pitched beside Ebenezer. And the Philistines pitched in Aphek. And the Philistines put themselves in array against Israel. And when they joined battle, Israel was smitten before the Philistines. And they slew of the army in the field about 4,000 men. And when the people were coming to the camp, the elders of Israel said, Wherefore hath the Lord smitten us today before the Philistines? Let us fetch the ark of the covenant of the Lord out of Shiloh unto us, that when it cometh among us, it may save us out of the hand of our enemies. So the people sent to Shiloh, that they might bring from thence the ark of the covenant of the Lord of hosts, which dwelleth between the cherubims, and the two sons of Eli, Hophni and Phinehas, were there with the ark of the covenant of God. Now skip down to verse 10. And the Philistines fought, and Israel was smitten, and they fled every man into his tent. And there was a very great slaughter, for there fell of Israel 6,000 footmen. And the ark of God was taken, and the two sons of Eli, Hophni and Phinehas, were slain. And then skip down to verse 17. And the messenger answered and said, Israel is fled before the Philistines, and there hath been also a great slaughter among the people. And thy two sons also, Hophni and Phinehas, are dead, and the ark of God has been taken. And it came to pass, when he made mention of the ark of God, that he fell from off the seat backward by the side of the gate, and his neck brake, and he died. And he was an old man and heavy. And he had judged Israel 40 years. Talking about Eli here. Now, I read that, and I had to reread it because it says, he fell from off the seat backward by the side of the gate, and his neck brake. Eli died of a broken neck. Now, it also says he was an old man. What else does it say about him? He was heavy. I kind of chuckled. He must have been a fat old man. I don't know, that's what I got. Kind of made me chuckle, because that never dawned on me. For some reason, we don't know, the Philistines attacked Israel, and the battle centered around Ebenezer and a town called Aphek. And when the battle was joined, the Philistines defeated the Israelites. About 4,000 men were killed, and it was a pretty humiliating defeat for Israel. What was Israel's most prized treasure? The Ark of the Covenant, right? And you got to remember at this time that Israel had no standing army. There was anarchy in the nation of Israel. They didn't have a standing army. The Israelites were just ordinary farmers at this time and herdsmen, and they were going about up against a pretty formal foe, the Philistines. Israel did not have a king, and they had not prayed for God to send them a deliverer to lead them as they had in times past. No wonder they were defeated. However, there was some organization in Israel. The elders, or the older men, served as military leaders. And I want to note again that there's no mention in the scriptures. And I know I skipped some of the scriptures there, but I did that for time's sake because I want to get to the point of the lesson here. But if you read chapter 4, chapter 5, and chapter 6 of 1 Samuel, you ain't going to find anywhere that Israel prayed at all. There's no mention of prayer being made to God. These men acted in their own human wisdom. And you got to remember that at this time, there was anarchy going on, and every man did what he thought was right. Worship had also been dishonored, so that few went to the tabernacle to worship, to seek the will of God and spiritual decisions. That wasn't going on like it should have been going on. And if it had been, and what did go on, Phinehas and Hophni, it was screwing it all up. The leaders realized the Lord was against them, but they did not pray, and they didn't seek the will of the Lord. Instead, they devised a scheme that they thought was going to ensure that God would give them victory. So what did they do? They devised a plan to bring the Ark of the Covenant into the battle, believing that God would be forced to defend the Ark and give Israel the victory. They were using the most holy possession that they had as kind of a good luck charm. If we take the Ark of the Covenant out there, God's going to defend the Ark, therefore he'll defend us. That's what they said. And when the Ark arrived, the men were greatly encouraged. They thought victory was theirs. And a great earth-shaking shout rang out from the camp of Israel. This momentarily terrified the Philistines. And the Philistines knew Hebrew history. They knew about the ark. They knew about the plagues of Egypt. They knew about the power of God. However, the Philistines also knew that they had a superior army. And in spite of the presence of the ark, it kind of renewed their attack on Israel. And in this battle, another 30,000 Israelites perished. And in the end, the Philistines captured the ark. we cannot ignore God and then use him to get us out of trouble when we get into trouble. I think a lot of people use God that way. The ark was captured, and those who had risked it all had lost everything. The elders of Israel misunderstood what was happening that day because they were ignorant of the word of God. In the battle, both Hophni and Phinehas were killed, just as God had promised. And when the news was brought to Eli, the high priest, a heavy old man, he fell off backwards and broke his neck. Now the prophecy of God had come to pass. And that was about 40 years from the time that they were told it was going to happen until it actually did happen. 40 years had passed. Let's look at 1 Samuel chapter 5 now. And again, I'm going to skip a little bit. But this is talking about the ark of God is a curse to the Philistines. And the Philistines took the ark of God and brought it from Ebenezer unto Ashdod, two different towns. When the Philistines took the ark of God, they brought it into the house of Dagon and set it by Dagon. And when they of Ashdod arose early on the morrow, behold, Dagon was fallen upon his face on the earth before the ark of the Lord. And they took Dagon and sent him into his place again. Folks, if you haven't figured this out yet, Dagon is an idol. So they took it into this temple that they had for Dagon. They set the ark next to the idol of this god that they called Dagon. Woke up the next morning, and the idol Dagon had fallen over. Keep that in mind. This is important. And when they of Ashdod arose early on the morrow, behold, Dagon was fallen upon his face on the earth before the ark of the Lord. And they took Dagon and set him up in his place again. And when they arose early on the next morning, behold, Dagon was fallen upon his face onto the ground before the ark of the Lord. And the head of Dagon and both palms of his hands were cut off upon the threshold. Only the stump of Dagon was left to him. Interesting. Skip down to verse 11 of chapter 5, 1 Samuel. So they sent and gathered together all the lords of the Philistines and said, Send away the ark of the God of Israel, and let it go again to his own place. That is to slay us not and our people. For there was a deadly destruction throughout all the city. The hand of God was very heavy there. Now, I'm going to read a little bit here. And you can follow along with me in 1 Samuel chapter 5. I think it's 1 Samuel chapter 5. I may have lost my place here. Give me 1 second. I do apologize. Okay, here we go. So we skipped verses 5 through 11. But I want to read verses 5 through 11 to you because this is going to tell you what happened here. So picking up in verse 5, 1 Samuel chapter 5, or we'll pick it up in 4. I'll reread 4. And when they arose early on the morning, behold, Dagon had fallen upon his face to the ground beside the ark of the Lord, and the head of Dagon and both palms of his hands were cut off upon the threshold. Only the stump of Dagon's head was left. Verse 5, Therefore neither the priests of Dagon nor any that come into Dagon's house, we're talking about where they had this idol at, tread on the threshold of Dagon and Ashdod unto this day. But the hand of the Lord was heavy upon them of Ashdod, and he destroyed them and smote them with emerods, even Ashdod and the coasts thereof. Do y'all know what an emerald is? We're going to read a little bit further, and you're going to find out what an emerald is. I bet you some of you may know. I do. Didn't know it until I looked it up. But verse 6, But the hand of the Lord was heavy upon them at Ashdod, and he destroyed them and smote them with emerods, even Ashdod and the coast thereof. And when the men of Ashdod saw that it was so, they said, The ark of God of Israel shall not abide with us, for his hand is sore upon us and upon Dagon our God. They sent therefore and gathered all the lords of the Philistines unto them and said, What shall we do with the ark of God of Israel? And they answered, Let the ark of God of Israel be carried about unto Gath. We're going to send it to another city, they said. And they carried the ark of God into Israel about thither. And it was so that after they had carried it about, the hand of the Lord was against the city with a very great destruction. And he smote the men of the city, both small and great, and they had emeralds in their secret places. Now that verse got me really wondering what the heck an emerald was. Google emerald. You know what it is? It's a hemorrhoid. You didn't think hemorrhoids were mentioned in the Bible, did you? Verse 10, therefore they sent the ark of God to Ekron. Now they're sending it to another city to get rid of it. Therefore they sent the ark of God to Ekron, and it came to pass as the ark of God came to Ekron that the Ekronites cried out, saying, they have brought about the ark of the God of Israel to slay us and our people. Well, yeah, folks, it seems to me nobody wanted the ark of, they didn't want the ark no more. I'm going to tell you a funny story about hemorrhoids, or emeralds. True story. When I was stationed in Guam, my mom and dad came out to visit us. They had to come out, the way they flew through Japan. And then from Japan, they flew to Guam. Well, I guess when you go to Japan, you have to go through this thing called customs. And they send your bag through the little conveyor belt, and anything that spots their eyes, you've got to open your bag and explain it to them. Imagine trying to explain to a Japanese security agent what hemorrhoid medicine is. Tux pads. My mama got stopped in Japanese customs because she couldn't tell the guy what a tux pad was. I cannot wait to tell my mom about this story in the Bible here. God is still God. No matter what men do or don't do, and the power of God is not imaginary. Idol gods have no power except the power that men give them. And the one true God operates and acts independently of human thought. The truth about God is simply He can do things. Whether we believe in Him or not, the Philistines found this out very painfully. Emeralds are painful, folks. I don't wish them on nobody. The Philistines knew the ark was a religious relic to Israel. When they captured it, they treated it with what they considered respect. They brought it to Ashdod and they put it in the temple of Dagon. They knew they knew the ark was a religious artifact, so they just stuck it in one of their idol temples. They thought they were doing right. Dagon, that idol, was represented by a man's head and torso, and the bottom of him kind of looked like the tail of a fish. This god was supposed to represent fruitfulness and fertility. Although the next morning, what happened? They found it fallen over, right? In front of the Ark of the Covenant. And they set the idol up again, and they left it there. Stop and think about that. If Dagon was real, if he was a real idol, this is what the Philistines should have recognized. If he had been a real idol, he should have been able to pick himself up, right? Then the next day, they came back, and he had again fallen. This time he was broken. The head and the hands had been separated. And it was at this point that the Lord really began to afflict the entire city of Ashdod. The people there developed painful hemorrhoids. Everyone in Ashdod and even the surrounding settlements developed this painful ailment. It just didn't happen to pregnant ladies or older people. It happened to everybody. You ever looked up what a hemorrhoid looks like? Because the story gets a little bit better here. And this is what I find very funny in the next part. Anyway, eventually the leaders of the Philistines realized that this plague was caused by the Ark of the Covenant. They started sending it from city. It went to that city. Those people got hemorrhoids. It went to another city. Those people got, you see what, put two and two together, you can figure out, I don't want no part of the ark is what they were saying. 1 Samuel chapter 6. Let's look at verse 1 and 2. And the ark of the Lord was in the country of the Philistines 7 months. And the Philistines called for the priests and the diviners, saying, what shall we do to the ark of the Lord? Tell us wherewith we shall send it to his place. Skip down to verse 7. Now therefore make a new cart, and take 2 milch kine, on which there hath come no yoke, and tie the kine to the cart, and bring their calves home from them. I'm going to stop right here. Anybody ever dealt with a milk cow? What do milk cow and calves have in common? A milk cow will not leave its calf's side. If that calf wanders, that milk cow is going to follow that calf. It's going to go where that calf's at. Now keep that in mind, okay? Because it says milch kind. That's what he's talking about, is a milk cow here. Now therefore make a new cart and take two milch kinds, or take two milk cows on which there hath never come a yoke. So first off, they got these two cows that's never had a yoke upon them. They don't know what to do with a yoke when it's on their back. Seems to me like the Philistines are trying to set something up here. Let's read on. And bring their calves home from them. So now they're separating the calves from the milk cows, mamas. And take the ark of the Lord and lay it upon the cart and put the jewels of gold which ye turn him for a trespass offering in a coffer by the side of thereof, and send it away that it may go. And see if it goeth up by the way of his own coast to Bethshemesh. Then he hath done us this great evil. But if not, then we shall know that it's not his hand that smote us. It was a chance that happened to us. And the men did so, and took two milk cows, and tied them to the cart, and shut up their calves at home. And they laid the ark of the Lord upon the cart and the coffer with mice of gold and images of their emerods. I'd stop right there when I read that. They made little golden mice for the 5 cities that they represented. And then they made little golden hemorrhoids. You ever seen a hemorrhoid? Google it. And then picture these Philistines making a golden hemorrhoid. It's kind of funny if you think about it. And the kine, or the cow, took the straight up way to the Bethshemesh and went along the highway, lowering as they went, and turned not aside to the right, nor right hand, or to the left. And the lords of the Philistines went after them unto the border of Bethshemesh. This also kind of reminded me of a joke that I heard one time about tithing. There's these three guys, and y'all probably heard me tell this story, but I'm going to tell it again. These 3 guys were discussing how they give their tithes to the church. And the first guy says, well, he goes, I take my paycheck, I go cash it, I draw a circle around me, I throw my cash up in the air, and whatever lands inside that circle, that's what I give to the Lord. Second guy says, well, I kind of do something similar to that too. I go cash my check, I draw a circle around me, I throw my money up in the air, and whatever lands on the outside of that circle, well, that's what I give to the Lord. The third guy, he was smart. He was like these Philistines here. He said, I do that, but I draw the circle, I throw my cash up in the air, and whatever the Lord wants, he keeps. Folks, that's what the Philistines did here. They took 2 milk cows that never had a yoke upon them. They put the ark on the back of it. They separated the calves from the mamas, knowing doggone well that them milk cows were going to go find those babies. And that if it was meant for the ark to be returned to Israel, then the Lord would just lead the milk cows off, right? But they thought them cows were going to come back. That's not what happened, though. That's not what happened. They were ignorant of the proper method and care of the ark. They didn't make any attempt to find out how to do it properly. And of course, they could have prayed to God about this, or they could have consulted someone in Israel if they really wanted to, but they didn't do that. They made up this plan. We're going to get 2 milk cows with calves, and that way we can keep the ark. They decided to make images of 5 mice and 5 hemorrhoids. I wished I could have seen that. That would have been comical to me. No, I mean, it would have been comical to me to watch them. Then they devised an intricate scheme to pretend to return the ark. They built a new cart, carried the ark, and found 2 milk cows with young calves, and that's what they used to pull it. And the plan was to shut up the calves at home, turn the cows loose by pulling the cart, because normally the cows would go to where the young were at. But that's not what happened. In this plan, we see the gross unbelief of these people, even after 7 months of misery. They still wanted to believe that their misery was just random. I think after I'd sent it to the first city, and the same thing that happened at that first city, and then they sent it to the third city, I think something would have been going off in my head that, hey, there's a coincidence here. However, folks, God's in control, right? Even of the cows with young calves, God's in control. The Philistines loaded the ark along with the golden mice and the golden hemorrhoids and the jewels and the gold in the box alongside the ark, and they set the cart loose. And to their surprise, the cows didn't go find their calves. It just kept walking down the road. God did what Dagon could never do. The ox knoweth his owner, and the ass his master's crib, Isaiah 1 tells us. God guided the cows. He kept their attention on the right road, overcame their desire to go see the calves, and brought home to the priestly city of Bethshemesh the Ark of the Covenant. God's providence overrules all the plans and schemes of us. God overruled the foolish plan to bring the ark into battle, and he overruled the foolish idolatry of the Philistines who wanted to incorporate it into their worship. Eventually, the ark would be given a safe resting place until King David moved to Jerusalem. You know, some people get on to me for saying this. They say, oh, you shouldn't say that, Ken. You want to hear God laugh? Tell him what your plans are. Because no matter what we do, God's in control. Lord, thank you for the day. Thank you for many blessings, Lord. Just pray and ask, dear Heavenly Father, that we might have learned something in this lesson that we might not have ever put two and two together. Please forgive me of my sins. Be with all of me in prayer.